Welcome to English Rise. Before we begin, I want you to pause for just a moment. Take a deep breath and think about something very important. Have you ever felt like your own mind is working against you? Maybe you wake up in the morning with a clear plan. You tell yourself that today will be different. Today, you will focus on your goals. Today, you will study harder, work harder, and take one step closer to the life you truly want. For a brief moment, everything feels possible. Your mind feels clear, your motivation feels strong, and you believe you can finally move forward. But then something strange begins to happen. Slowly, quietly, almost like a whisper in the background of your mind, a small voice begins to speak. It says things like, "Maybe tomorrow would be a better day to start." Or sometimes it says, "You are not ready yet." And in other moments, it becomes even more convincing. It tells you, other people are already ahead of you. They are smarter, more talented, more prepared. At first, those thoughts seem small. They feel harmless, almost unimportant. But the strange thing about thoughts is that the more attention you give them, the stronger they become. A single small doubt can grow into a heavy weight that slowly controls your decisions. Many people believe their biggest enemies are outside in the world. They blame their problems on difficult situations, unfair circumstances, bad luck, or other people. But if you look deeper, if you truly examine your life with honesty, you may discover something surprising. Most people are not defeated by their problems. They are defeated by their own thoughts. The real battle is not outside. The real battle is happening quietly inside the mind. Today, we are going to explore something extremely powerful. Something that has the potential to completely change the direction of your life. Today, we are going to talk about how to control your thoughts. Because the truth is actually very simple. Your thoughts create your actions. Your actions create your habits. And your habits slowly build the life you experience every day. If your thoughts are filled with doubt, fear, and negativity, those thoughts will slowly influence your behaviors. But if your thoughts become calm, focused, and disciplined, your entire life can begin to move in a completely different direction. To understand this idea more clearly, let me tell you a story. This is the story of a young man named Daniel. Daniel was not very different from most people watching this video right now. He had dreams, big dreams. He imagined a future where he would become confident, successful, and respected. He wanted to build a life where he could speak clearly, think clearly, and achieve meaningful goals. He wanted to make his family proud. He wanted to prove to himself that he was capable of becoming more than he was today. But despite all those dreams, Daniel felt stuck. Every day felt like a silent struggle inside his own mind. Whenever he thought about trying something new, a voice in his head would immediately say, "You will probably fail." When he saw other people succeeding, another voice would whisper, "They are better than you." When he made even the smallest mistake, his mind would replay that mistake again and again like a broken record. Over time, those thoughts became stronger. They followed him everywhere, at work, at home, even when he tried to relax. Nighttime was always the most difficult part of Daniel's day. During the day, he could distract himself with conversations, tasks, or small responsibilities. But at night, when the world became quiet, his thoughts became louder. He would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling while his mind replayed old memories. Conversations he wished he had handled differently. Opportunities he believed he had already lost. mistakes he wished he could erase. Sometimes he would stay awake for hours, trapped inside his own thinking. As the days passed, Daniel began noticing something disturbing. His thoughts were not just random ideas, they were patterns. The same doubts repeated themselves again and again. Every time he wanted to take action, his mind would quickly create reasons why he should not. It was almost as if his mind was trying to protect him from failure by keeping him in the same place. But deep inside, Daniel understood something important. Staying in the same place was slowly destroying his confidence. Sometimes Daniel would watch successful people online or read stories about individuals who had transformed their lives. At first, those stories inspired him, but after a few minutes, his mind would start whispering again. "Those people are different," the voice would say. "They are smarter than you. They had better opportunities." Slowly, the inspiration would disappear, replaced by quiet frustration. Daniel began wondering if his mind had become a prison he could never escape. The strange thing was that Daniel knew he wanted to change. He truly wanted to improve his life. He wanted to become disciplined. He wanted to become confident. He wanted to become someone who could take action instead of overthinking everything. But every time he tried to move forward, his mind seemed to pull him backward again. One evening, after an especially exhausting day, Daniel decided to go for a walk. Near his home, there was a quiet park that he often visited when he needed time to think. The sun was slowly setting, painting the sky with soft shades of orange, pink, and purple. A gentle breeze moved through the tall trees, and the sound of distant laughter from children playing could be heard across the park. Daniel walked slowly along the path, his hands in his pockets, his thoughts heavy again. Eventually, he reached a wooden bench beneath a large tree. He sat down, leaned back, and looked up at the sky. For a few moments he said nothing. Then quietly, he whispered to himself, "Why is my mind like this? I want to improve my life, but my thoughts keep pulling me backward." Just as he finished speaking, he heard a calm voice beside him. "You look like someone who is fighting a difficult battle." Daniel turned his head in surprise. An older man was sitting on the other side of the bench. Daniel had not noticed him before. The man had calm eyes and a peaceful expression. His posture was relaxed, and there was something about him that felt strangely comforting. Daniel looked at him curiously. "How did you know?" he asked. The old man smiled gently. "Because I fought the same battle many years ago." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "What battle?" he asked. The old man looked directly at him and replied slowly, "The battle inside the mind." For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Those words felt strangely accurate. Finally, he spoke. "I feel like my thoughts control me," Daniel admitted quietly. "I try to stay positive, but negative thoughts always come back." The old man nodded slowly, as if he understood perfectly. "That happens to many people," he said calmly. "But there is a simple reason for it." Daniel waited. "You never trained your mind." Daniel frowned slightly. "Train my mind?" he repeated. The old man chuckled softly. "Most people train their body. They go to the gym. They lift weights. They run. They practice sports. They spend hours trying to make their body stronger." Then he paused before continuing. "But very few people train the most powerful tool they have, their mind." Daniel listened carefully. "So how do you train your mind?" he asked. The old man looked towards the sky and pointed at the drifting clouds. "Look at the clouds," he said. Daniel followed his finger and looked up. Large white clouds were slowly floating across the evening sky. "Do you see how they move?" the old man asked. "Yes," Daniel replied. The old man continued calmly. "Your thoughts are exactly like those clouds. They appear, they move, and eventually they disappear." He paused for a moment. "But most people make one big mistake. They believe every thought they see." Daniel looked at the clouds again with deeper attention. For the first time, he noticed how slowly they moved across the sky. Some clouds were large and heavy, while others were small and thin. Yet no cloud stayed in the same place forever. They kept moving. And suddenly, Daniel realized something powerful. If clouds never stay forever in the sky, maybe thoughts do not stay forever in the mind either. "So you mean, I don't have to believe every thought?" he asked. The old man smiled. "Exactly. That is the first step to controlling your mind. Awareness." He continued speaking. "Most people live their entire lives without noticing what is happening inside their mind. Thoughts appear, and they react immediately. If a fearful thought appears, they panic. If a negative thought appears, they believe it. If an angry thought appears, they react without thinking. But a trained mind behaves differently. A trained mind observes thoughts before reacting." Daniel felt as if a new door had opened inside his thinking. Until this moment, he had always believed that his thoughts were facts. If his mind said something negative, he immediately believed it. But now he began to understand that thoughts were not commands. They were simply mental events passing through the mind. "So instead of believing a thought, I should question it?" he asked. "Correct," the old man replied. "For example, if your mind says you're not good enough, instead of accepting it immediately, you ask yourself a simple question. Is this thought actually true?" Daniel thought for a moment. "And what if it is not true?" he asked. The old man smiled warmly. "Then you simply let it pass, like a cloud." At that moment, Daniel felt something shift deep inside him. It was not a dramatic change. Nothing magical happened, but there was a quiet feeling of relief. For the first time, he realized that his mind was not his enemy. His mind was simply untrained. Just like a muscle that had never been exercised, his thinking had become weak and uncontrolled. For the first time in a long time. Daniel felt hopeful, and that quiet moment became the beginning of a powerful transformation. But Daniel had no idea that the next few weeks would test his mind in ways he never expected. Because controlling your thoughts is not something you learn in a single day. It is something you build, one decision at a time. As Daniel sat quietly on that bench, he realized that the real battle of his life was not outside in the world. It was happening inside his own thinking. Every negative belief, every fear, every doubt had slowly shaped the way he saw himself. And if those thoughts had the power to make him feel weak, then perhaps new thoughts could make him stronger. For the first time, he imagined what his life could look like if his mind became calm instead of chaotic. What if he woke up each morning with clear focus? What if instead of doubting himself, he believed in his ability to grow? The idea felt strange at first, but it also felt possible. Daniel understood that change would not happen overnight. Habits that had been built over years could not disappear in a single moment. But the conversation he had just experienced gave him something he had been missing for a long time: direction. He realized that controlling the mind was similar to learning any other skill. At the beginning, it feels difficult and unfamiliar. But with practice, patience, and awareness, the mind slowly becomes stronger and more disciplined. And as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon that evening, Daniel stood up from the bench with a quiet but powerful decision inside his heart. For the first time in his life, he would stop fighting his thoughts and start training his mind. As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon that evening, Daniel stood up from the bench with a quiet but powerful decision inside his heart. For the first time in many years, he felt something different. It was not excitement. It was not even confidence yet. It was something much simpler, but much more important. It was clarity. For the first time, Daniel understood that his biggest enemy had never been the world around him. It had always been the untrained voice inside his own mind. And if that voice had learned to control him over the years, maybe it was time for him to learn how to control it. That night, when Daniel returned home, everything looked exactly the same as before. His small apartment was quiet. The same furniture stood in the same place. The same dim light filled the room. But inside Daniel, something had changed. He sat down on his bed and remembered the words of the old man. 3 habits changed my entire life: reading, meditation, and silence. At first, those habits sounded simple, almost too simple. Daniel had heard advice like that before. People always talked about improving themselves, building discipline, and controlling their thoughts, but very few people actually followed through. Daniel knew that if he wanted a different life, he would have to start doing something different. So that night, he made a small decision. He picked up a book. At first, it felt strange. Daniel had never been someone who enjoyed reading. After just a few pages, his mind began wandering. Random thoughts appeared again. This is boring. This will not change anything. You will quit after a few days anyway. For a moment, Daniel almost closed the book. But then he remembered something the old man had said. Not every thought deserves your attention. So instead of obeying those thoughts, Daniel simply noticed them and kept reading. The next day, he tried something new: meditation. He sat quietly on the floor of his room and closed his eyes. At first, he expected something peaceful to happen. Maybe his mind would suddenly become calm. But the opposite happened. His thoughts became even louder. Random memories appeared. Old worries returned. Future problems began forming inside his mind. For a moment, Daniel felt frustrated. This is impossible, he thought. My mind will never become quiet. But then he remembered the clouds. Thoughts appear, thoughts move, and thoughts disappear. So instead of fighting his thoughts, Daniel simply watched them, one by one, just like clouds moving across the sky. The first few days were difficult, very difficult. Sometimes his mind felt even more chaotic than before. Doubts still appeared. Negative thoughts still whispered. But something slowly began to change. Daniel was no longer reacting to every thought immediately. He was observing them. And that small difference began to weaken their power. During the second week, Daniel noticed something surprising. The negative voice inside his mind had not disappeared, but it had become slightly weaker. It still tried to interrupt his focus, but now Daniel could recognize it more clearly. Instead of believing every doubt, he began questioning those thoughts the same way the old man had taught him. One morning while reading his book, Daniel caught himself smiling quietly. For years, he had believed that his mind was something uncontrollable, something that simply happened to him. But now he realized that the mind could be trained just like a muscle. The more attention and discipline he practiced, the stronger his control became. Still, the journey was not easy. Some days, Daniel woke up feeling motivated and focused. Other days, his mind returned to its old habits of worry and overthinking. On those difficult days, he reminded himself that progress does not happen in a straight line. Growth often looks slow and invisible at the beginning. Weeks passed, and Daniel slowly began noticing small changes in the way he handled challenges. When a problem appeared, he no longer panicked immediately. Instead, he paused, took a breath, and observed his thoughts. This simple pause created space between his thoughts and his actions. Daniel also noticed that silence had become one of the most powerful habits in his life. Instead of filling every quiet moment with noise, music, or social media, he sometimes sat quietly and allowed his mind to settle. In those silent moments, he began understanding himself more clearly. A week passed, then another week. Slowly, Daniel began noticing small changes in his daily life. When a negative thought appeared, he no longer believed it automatically. When fear tried to stop him from taking action, he paused and questioned it. And when his mind began comparing him to others, he reminded himself that every person was walking their own path. The changes were small, but they were real. One afternoon, Daniel returned to the same park where he had met the old man. He sat on the same wooden bench beneath the tall tree and looked at the sky again. The clouds were moving slowly across the evening sky, just like before. But this time, Daniel noticed something different. His mind was quieter. Not perfectly quiet, but calmer than before. For the first time in a long time, he felt present in the moment instead of trapped inside endless thinking. As he sat there reflecting on the past few weeks, Daniel realized that real change does not happen suddenly. It happens quietly through daily practice. Each small decision to observe his thoughts instead of reacting had slowly reshaped the way his mind worked. He also realized that confidence is not something that magically appears overnight. It is built slowly through repeated experiences of discipline. Every time Daniel chose to read instead of scrolling on his phone, every time he chose to meditate instead of worrying, he strengthened a new version of himself. As he sat there reflecting on the past few weeks, he heard footsteps approaching along the path. Daniel turned his head, and there he was, the old man, walking slowly with the same calm expression on his face. Daniel smiled slightly. "You came back," he said. The old man sat beside him on the bench. "No," he replied softly. "You came back." Daniel laughed quietly. "I tried what you told me," he said. "Reading, meditation, observing my thoughts." "And?" the old man asked. Daniel looked at the sky again. "My mind is still noisy," he admitted. "But it feels different now. The thoughts are still there, but they don't control me the same way anymore." The old man nodded slowly. "That means you have taken the first step." "The first step?" Daniel asked. "Yes," the old man replied. "Most people spend their entire lives being controlled by their thoughts without even realizing it. But the moment you become aware of your thinking, you begin taking back control." Daniel sat quietly as those words settled into his mind. "But remember something important," the old man continued. "Training the mind is not a one-time event. It is a daily practice. Some days your mind will feel calm. Other days it will feel chaotic. But discipline means continuing anyway." Daniel understood now that the goal was not to eliminate negative thoughts completely, The goal was to develop the ability to choose which thoughts deserved his attention. That small skill had the power to change the direction of his life. As the evening breeze moved gently through the trees, Daniel felt a quiet sense of gratitude, not for success or achievements, but for the simple realization that he had the ability to guide his own mind. And in that peaceful moment, Daniel realized something that many people spend their entire lives searching for. The mind is not a prison. It becomes a prison only when we stop paying attention to it. But when we learn to observe it, question it, and guide it, the mind becomes the most powerful tool we possess. Daniel stayed on the bench for a few more minutes after the old man finished speaking. He looked around the park carefully. The same trees were there. The same sky stretched above him. The same gentle wind moved through the leaves. Yet everything felt different. For years, Daniel had rushed through life without ever pausing long enough to observe it. His mind had always been busy worrying about the past or fearing the future. But now he understood that peace was not something far away. It was something that could exist in the present moment. He also realized that many of the fears that had controlled his decisions were never as powerful as they seemed. Most of them were simply thoughts that he had repeated so many times that they started to feel like truth. Now Daniel had a new way of dealing with those thoughts. Instead of believing them immediately, he would observe them calmly and ask himself a simple question. Is this thought helping me grow, or is it holding me back? If the thought was negative and unhelpful, he would simply let it pass like a cloud in the sky. If the thought was useful and encouraging, he would give it his attention and act on it. This small shift in thinking slowly gave Daniel something he had been missing for a long time. Control. Not control over the world, not control over other people, but control over the one thing that truly shaped his life: his own mind. Daniel slowly stood up from the bench and began walking along the quiet path of the park. The evening air felt cooler now, and the lights around the park had started to glow softly. As he walked, he noticed something he had never paid attention to before: the peaceful rhythm of ordinary life happening around him. A young boy was learning to ride a bicycle while his father walked beside him patiently. A couple sat quietly on another bench, talking softly while watching the sunset. Birds were returning to their nests, and the gentle sound of leaves moving in the wind filled the silence. Daniel realized that life had always been moving like this around him, but his mind had been too noisy to notice it. For the first time, he felt a deep sense of calm growing inside his chest. Not because his problems had disappeared, but because he now understood that his thoughts did not have to control every moment of his life. He continued walking slowly, thinking about the habits he had started building, reading a few pages every day, sitting quietly in meditation, and learning to observe his thoughts instead of immediately reacting to them. Those habits seemed small, almost insignificant at first, but now Daniel could feel how they were slowly reshaping the way he experienced the world. He understood that real change was not dramatic or sudden. It happened quietly through consistent effort, day after day, choice after choice. And although his journey had only just begun, Daniel felt something he had not felt for a very long time: hope. Not the kind of hope that depends on luck or circumstances, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are slowly learning how to guide your own mind. As Daniel walked toward the park exit and looked back once more at the bench where everything had started, he realized something powerful. The conversation with the old man had not simply given him advice, it had given him a new way of seeing his own mind. And that single shift in awareness had already begun changing the direction of his life. In the end, Daniel understood a simple but powerful truth. Life does not change in one big moment. It changes through small daily choices. Every time he chose patience over worry, focus over distraction, and awareness over confusion, he moved one step closer to becoming the person he wanted to be. And with that quiet realization, Daniel continued walking forward, not with fear, but with a calm and determined mind.